All right, so get this. We're diving into your Reddit threads about S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, specifically patch 1.0.1.
Lots to unpack.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There's a lot of buzz about what players love, what's making them rage quit, and what this patch means for the future of the game.
Yeah, it's almost like the zone itself. Everything's in constant flux, even player opinions,
Especially after this patch, right?
Definitely.
Hmm.
And, one of the biggest things people are talking about are the mutants.
The mutants, yeah. Everyone was going full Rambo, just unloading entire clips into these things, even checking grenades, but they were barely flinching.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of players were thrown off by that because
Yeah.
in the previous games, it was all about ammo selection, using the right ammo for the right mutant.
Right, like you'd switch to AP rounds for those tougher armored enemies.
Exactly. You'd think blasting a Chimera with a Saiga 12 gauge would do the trick.
Yeah, in the older games, those things were Swiss cheese after a couple of shots.
Right, but in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, people were dumping 10 mags and barely making a dent.
It's like they were shooting at a tank.
And that actually brings up another interesting point about that early game Chimera encounter.
Oh, yeah. That one was brutal.
It sparked a whole debate about how the game wanted you to play. It felt like it was designed to make you run, not fight.
It's like you're just getting your bearings in the zone and bam, instant horror movie chase scene.
Exactly. And it made a lot of players question if S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 was sacrificing that freedom, that open-ended approach that made the series so popular.
Totally. And speaking of open worlds, it's interesting that some players were comparing S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 to those massive open world games from like Bethesda and Ubisoft.
Strange comparison at first glance.
Right. But even with all the issues that people had, a lot of players felt that S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 had this atmosphere, this sense of danger and resource management that you just don't find in those other games.
It's like the zone itself is more compelling than these vast but often kind of empty worlds.
Yeah, players were praising S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 for that handcrafted feel. It felt gritty and real, not just a bunch of copy and pasted content.
And they loved that hardcore economy,
Yeah.
Every bullet counted. Every scrap of food mattered.
It made surviving in the zone feel like a real achievement. But of course, there's always another side to the story.
Of course. For some players, that hardcore approach was just too much. They felt like they were spending more time scavenging and grinding than actually enjoying the story and the world.
So the same things that hooked some players ended up turning others away. That's the zone for you. I guess always keeping you on your toes.
And then just when everyone was digging into those debates, patch 1.0.1 dropped.
Like a ray of sunshine breaking through the radioactive clouds.
Exactly. So what did this patch actually do? Well, it tackled a lot of those economic pain points that players were complaining about.
Okay, so like what specifically?
Or repairs for weapons and armor became cheaper. Mission rewards got a boost, and your armor wouldn't fall apart quite as quickly. Plus, they squashed a bunch of bugs, especially in that On the Edge mission.
Yeah, that one was notorious for bugs.
It was. And so the big question is, how did the community react? Did this patch smooth things over?
Yeah, was everyone happy?
Well, the zone, there's always going to be some turbulence. Some players were thrilled, especially about those economic tweaks. But others worried that by nerfing some of those mutants, especially the chimeras, the game would become too easy.
So even a patch designed to make things better ends up stirring the pot.
It really makes you wonder, what exactly is the sweet spot for a S.T.A.L.K.E.R game?
That's a great question. And speaking of finding solutions, let's talk about the heroes of the Zonro, the modders.
These modders, they're like the legendary stalkers. They can craft anything from scrap metal and duct tape.
Seriously, they saw all these issues and were just like, hold my vodka, I got this.
It's incredible, and they didn't stop at just fixing things. They added whole new features, like night vision.
Yeah, what was the deal with that? I mean, exploring the zone at night with just a little headlamp.
Yeah.
It's asking for trouble.
You're basically mutant Chow.
No, thanks. So yeah, big shout out to the modders for making those nighttime excursions a bit less terrifying.
Absolutely. And speaking of terrifying, let's talk about the AI.
Ooh, yeah, that was another big one. A lot of players were not impressed.
To say the least.
It's like you'd shoot at an enemy and they'd just stand there like, huh, not exactly immersive.
It was weird. I think people were expecting big things from the A-Life 2.0 system.
A Life 2.0 that was supposed to make the zone super dynamic and unpredictable, right?
Yeah, it was a huge selling point for the game.
So what happened? Did it just not live up to the hype?
I think the potential was there, but it needed more polish. The AI routines were pretty basic, and the mutants didn't always react realistically.
Right, it felt kind of clunky.
Exactly. So basically, the modders saw this and said, challenge accepted.
And they actually delivered right.
Oh, yeah. The results are amazing. We're talking mods that completely overhaul enemy behavior, making them smarter, more reactive, way more challenging.
It's like they gave those NPCs a brain transplant.
Some serious upgrades for sure.
Yeah.
Some mods even introduce faction-specific behaviors.
Yeah.
So like duty members will play more defensively while freedom fighters go on the offensive.
So you never know what to expect. That's
Yeah,
really
right.
cool.
And it's not just combat either. Some mods focus on making the A-life simulation even richer.
Oh, really?
Like how? Well, you might stumble upon stalkers battling mutants for territory, or you might find a group defending their camp from a pack of dogs.
Wow, that's awesome. It actually makes the zone feel like a real ecosystem.
Exactly. It's not just a static backdrop for your adventures. It's alive.
It's about those unscripted moments, right? The things you don't see coming.
Exactly. The stuff that makes you feel like you're a part of something bigger.
It's like the modders are helping to realize the true potential of the zone, pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
It all comes back to that core question.
Yeah.
What is the ideal S.T.A.L.K.E.R experience? Is it the vision that the developers had, or is it something that's always evolving, shaped by the players themselves?
It's really interesting, and it shows how passionate this community is. It's a collaborative project in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. You see that same passion when it comes to the social interactions in the game.
And that's been a big topic of discussion, right? A lot of players are saying that those social interactions in STLKER2, well, they just don't quite hit the mark.
That's true. The zone is rarely a solitary experience, but the game sometimes struggles to capture that feeling.
Yeah, that feeling of camaraderie, that shared purpose. We saw that in the previous game.
Exactly. Players miss those campfire stories, those tense negotiations with faction leaders, those moments of shared laughter and fear. You know, the things that make the zone feel like a real community.
The characters and the dialogue in STLKER2 sometimes feel a bit flat. I don't know.
Yeah, they lack that depth, that complexity that we saw in the previous games.
It's almost like walking through a ghost town.
You see the bodies, but their souls are missing.
That's a great way to put it. But thankfully, the modders are on the case again.
As always. So what are they up to? Well, there are mods that enhance the existing dialogue, giving the NPCs more personality and backstory.
Okay, so they're adding some much-needed depth.
Yeah. And there are also mods that introduce completely new characters, adding more variety to the zone's population.
It's like they're breathing life into those silent faces.
Giving them voices and stories that make you want to stop and listen.
It's amazing how the community is stepping up to fill those gaps.
It's a testament to the enduring power of the S.T.A.L.K.E.R universe. You know, in many ways, the zone is a blank canvas, an open invitation for players to contribute their own stories.
It's a collaborative storytelling project.
Exactly. Everyone adding their own brushstrokes.
I like that. And speaking of masterpieces, there's been a lot of talk about STALKER2's legacy, how it connects to the original trilogy.
Right. It's a tough act to follow. You've got these iconic games that defined a genre, and now you're trying to create something new while still honoring what came before.
Finding that balance can't be easy.
Not at all. And some players feel that STALKER2 relies a little too heavily on nostalgia, you know, rehashing familiar locations and characters without bringing enough new ideas to the table.
Like they're trying to recapture the magic of the past instead of forging ahead.
Right. But then there are others who appreciate those nods to the past. They see them as a way of honoring the series while building something new and exciting.
It's that classic debate, right? Stick with what you know or try something completely different.
And there's no easy answer,
Yeah.
especially in the Zone.
It's about finding that sweet spot, that balance between the familiar and the new.
Honoring the past while embracing the future.
And that's what makes these discussions so fascinating. It's not just about the game itself. It's about our own relationship with the past, with change, with the things that we hold dear.
So what are your thoughts on this? Do you think STALKER2 strikes the right balance? Or could it have benefited from taking more risks?
That's a great question, and it leads us right into one of the most hotly debated topics about STLKER2. The difficulty.
Yeah.
The difficulty. It's like they cranked it up to 11, and now everyone's trying to figure out if it's brutal or brilliant.
It's definitely a conversation starter. Right from the get-go, people were bumping heads over how tough those mutants were.
Oh, yeah, some players were all about it. They were like, finally a game that makes you work for it. You know, it forced them to get tactical use, the environment, really think about every shot.
And, you know, there's something to be said for overcoming a challenge, especially in a game like STALKER, where survival is always at stake.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you had players who felt like that difficulty was just a cheap way to make the game longer.
Yeah, like those mutants were just bullet sponges padding out the game's length.
Exactly.
Mm.
Especially when you factor in the economy. You're
Mhm.
already scrounging for ammo and supplies, and then you run into a mutant that takes half your arsenal to bring down.
I can see how that would get frustrating.
Yeah, it can feel like you're constantly hitting your head against a wall.
So it's all about finding that balance, right?
Right.
Making it challenging but not impossible.
Right. And that's where patch 1.0.1 comes in. It really tried to address some of those economic issues. Repairs got cheaper missions paid out more, and armor lasted longer.
So they tried to make it a bit more forgiving.
Exactly. And for a lot of players, that was a good thing. It let them focus more on the exploration, the story,
Hmm.
those signature S.T.A.L.K.E.R moments.
Yeah.
But of course, not everyone was happy.
There's always someone who's not happy, right? What were they complaining about this time?
Well, some players felt like the changes went too far, especially nerfing the mutants.
You're kidding! The mutants again.
Yeah, it's funny. The Chimera was a big one. People were like, hey, they took away its teeth. It's not scary anymore.
It's that constant back and forth, isn't it? Trying to find that sweet spot between accessibility and challenge.
Exactly. And it raises the question, what is the right level of difficulty? Is it about forcing players to master every single mechanic? Or is it about creating an experience that's engaging without feeling unfair?
And that's where the modding community really shines. They give players the tools to fine-tune that experience to their liking. We've seen some amazing mods that tweak the AI, the economy, and they're not just making things easier.
Oh no, they're pushing the boundaries of the game. There are mods that let you build your own bases in the zone. Can you imagine that?
No way! That's insane!
So they're saying, here's the zone. Make it your own. You can gather resources, build shelters, set up defenses against raiders and mutants.
It's like a whole new level of S.T.A.L.K.E.R.
It's not just about surviving anymore. It's about thriving, about shaping the zone to your will. And that's what I find so inspiring about this community. They're not just playing the game, they're taking ownership of it, expanding it, breathing new life into it.
It's like they're taking that core S.T.A.L.K.E.R. spirit of adaptation and resourcefulness and applying it to the game itself.
Exactly.
Okay.
It makes you realize that the zone is a reflection of the community that surrounds it.
Yeah.
It's this amazing space where creativity and collaboration just explode. And players and developers are constantly pushing the limits of what's possible.
So for all you stalkers out there venturing into this digital wasteland, remember, patch 1.0.1 might have smoothed out some of the rough edges, but the conversation about what makes a truly great S.T.A.L.K.E.R. experience, well, that's far from over.
That's part of the beauty of it.
Yeah.
The zone is always changing, always evolving. And ultimately, it's up to you how you want to experience it.
Will you embrace the hardcore challenge and test your skills against the odds? Or will you shape the zone to your liking and create an experience that's tailored to your playstyle? The choice is yours.
The zone is a mirror in a lot of ways. It reflects our desires, our fears, how we approach challenges and adversity.
So as you're exploring its dangers and mysteries, remember, you're not just playing a game, you're shaping an experience. And that's what makes S.T.A.L.K.E.R. so special. It's a world that's as unique and individual as the players who inhabit it.